Hello everyone, it's Jamarl Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. Guys, hope everyone is alright. Let me check my sound, make sure this isn't changed or become odd between times. That's not bad. So, one of the odd, first, just fun announcement. Give me your topics for your patrons. Patrons, put them on the last video. In the last video that I did is on Patreon now. You can put it under. This is Viewer Appreciation Month. My wife came up with this idea. She's better at this stuff than I am. And it was Subscriber Appreciation Month, or I should say Patron Appreciation Month. Each week, we're going to draw a t-shirt, or person to get a t-shirt. I Bay won last week, and we're going to pick on Friday. Ideally at 5 p.m. 5 p.m. is when I'm going to do the next show. I suppose I'm going to try to keep the shows probably at the same time, meaning the next 5 p.m. on each day, each Friday, where they get to choose a topic, or a topic gets to be chosen. So send in your picks on the last video that was done, and we can go through them and essentially make a choice. There's that. One of the interesting things that happened today. I was at Fault Lines, and we're doing the show. Lee's ill. He's not feeling well. We are doing the show. Too much of an abundance of left-wing energy. And so we brought in one of the other gentlemen who works on the show, who's not a hard right-winger, but he's definitely anti-establishment right-wing. But we also had a gentleman to call in, a guy named Ali Alexander. Now, Ali Alexander was calling in to talk about censorship. He calls himself, or at the very least the show is calling him, a right-wing philosopher. I can't make that up. That's the real name. And I'm not ragging on him. Those terms are just funny to go together. Nevertheless, so Ali called into the show, and Ali said something which prompted me to ask a question where I nearly fell out of my chair hearing his response, because I thought his response was amazing and awesome. And true on God knows how many accounts, but you would have had a hard time pulling a right winger to admit it absent of the censorship. What do I mean? He was talking about the censorship and Alex Jones, and I asked him a question. I said, within your right-wing philosophy, this libertarian philosophy that you guys tout, the 1% and private enterprise was awesome. Businesses, for the most part, can do what businesses want because it's their business. It's private enterprise. This is my property. I get to do whatever I want on my property. Great. How do you reconcile not being okay with Alex Jones being silenced? I mean, after all, YouTube is a private business. Apple is a private business. All of the companies that silence Alex Jones are private businesses. Under your ideology, isn't silencing Jones perfectly okay, perfectly fine? Because it is the company that's doing it, and that company, free market. He can do whatever he wants. Oh man, I wish you could see that clip. The hand wringing, the twisting, the it hurts, it hurts, oh it hurts. Oh, we may need legislation. We may need legislation. I love that, because at the end of the day, he admitted, yeah, I mean, we're giving private enterprise too much power. Now, to put it in context, from my understanding, 70% of the online traffic, or the people who get their news, when people get their news, 70% of it is gotten from either Google or Facebook. Think about that. Do you remember during the election when the email thing scandal was coming up with Clinton? And for whatever reason, information that you will put in for Google, let's say Clinton and emails, will be different than what you will put in for something like DuckDuckGo. That's odd. Why is that happening? Why is the search algorithm all of a sudden turning weird results? If I put in something like Clinton and emails, I shouldn't get kittens. And you weren't getting kittens, but you were getting something ridiculous. You weren't getting what you were actually looking for. If you put in Clinton and war crimes, you would get something different. Lee Camp covered this. It was an amazing thing. It came across as if a tech company was either shadow banning or manipulating the algorithm to give people information that was more in line with their thinking of the company itself. That's what it looked like. It hurt him to his heart to admit, yes, there needs to be some level of regulation so companies can't do whatever companies want to do. And look, I say the precedent has been set with civil rights law. I mean, I've even heard, if I'm not mistaken, that Ron Paul get caught in tangled webs when you ask Ron Paul about this idea of what about somebody who's black coming into a shop? Should they be able to be turned away because of the color of their skin? If you're saying, yes, I'm purely in line with this idea of a free market, you're going to tell that guy to kick rocks that don't like you because of the color of your skin. You've set the precedent. You've already set the precedent that businesses can't do any and everything that they want just because they're within the confines of their business. That if you open that shop, there are going to be certain rules and regulations that you're going to be stuck with just by virtue of opening the shop and trying to do business in America. I make the argument that the same thing is true from the standpoint of these companies, or at the very least, the same thing needs to be true. I don't know how far Ali Alexander would have agreed with me on it, but he damn sure agreed with this idea of regulations or antitrust or something. He was firmly in line with some of the body interceding into what that business was doing in order to stop that business from doing it. I put it to you that way. Look, the point that I'm making here is basic and straightforward. Politicians do what is in the interest of the politician to do. That's just like human beings do what is in the interest of the human being to do. Societal need, integrity, all of those things are minor players in this particular dynamic. Those things may factor in, but at the end of the day, that person is a person, and that person has an emotional base, and that emotional base knows what is in that person's best interest, and it takes an extra thing for that person to ignore what is in their best interest. What I mean, people tend to float to the lowest common energy level, meaning if something is in their best interest, you would have a few people who would go against the thing that is in their best interest for the benefit of the whole. But all in all, just on averages, the person is going to go to the least common denominator. And I would say that is the world that you have with you. I say that to make a very particular point. If you are a politician, you are a status quo politician, you are a Republican or you are a Democrat, you get into office and there is a populist backlash and you look out from your ivory tower at the people with their pitchforks and their fires, screaming, spitting, angry, kicking up dust, kicking up grass on the left and on the right. Donald Trump being in that office from the standpoint of the right is a populist revolt. They don't like him. They will use him in order to get the things that they need, like tax cuts and everything else, but they don't particularly like him. He is not of their type, even though he is of their class. There's a difference. Same class, same ideals, accomplishing fundamentally the same thing with just a different degree of tone. That different degree of tone is the thing that they're using to say that he's somehow anti-establishment or populist. From the Democratic side, the same thing is taking place, with the difference of the Bernie Sanders wing not necessarily taking crown while at the same token winning the argument ideologically. But it hasn't necessarily borne fruit. By the same token, it doesn't really matter if it borne fruit. I think it's scaring the shit out of people who are in power. Now, if you are a Democrat, you are a Republican, you have assiduously tried to keep out third parties to the process because you realize that if there's a third party on your left, it's going to drain away votes. If there's a third party on your right, it's going to drain away votes, and you want to win. So, laws and so forth, you try to work this thing from a political position to keep those things out of the process. When Maine passed their ranked choice voting law, Maine politicians squashed it. The public had to come back and reinvigorate it, saying, no, when we said we wanted ranked choice voting, we actually meant that we wanted ranked choice voting. Democrats and Republicans have a vested interest in putting through policy and putting through procedure. And beyond putting through policy and procedure, if you're bringing people to Congress, browbeating tech companies to try to get those tech companies to squash revolt, squash dissent. And one of the pieces where they brought Twitter, Facebook to Congress, one of the things they tried to impress upon them was, you understand that you are not just a platform, you are an organization or you are an entity to help silence dissent. Is that really the organization or the job of Twitter and these groups, in these organizations, these platforms? Is their job really to do politics by any other means or squash political thought that may be antagonistic to the Democratic and Republican Party? I don't think so. I don't necessarily think that's the aim or the needs of those platforms, I do think that is the aim and the needs of the politicians who are in that office from the standpoint of Democrats and Republicans. I don't believe that populist Democrats care one iota about what's taking place on Facebook and Twitter. I do believe that people like Feinstein, who's keeping lists and taking names and getting organic lists of people who are talking about the Russia stuff, this should be problematic. This should be completely problematic. The Soviet Union, going back in 1922, when the Bolsheviks took over, had an organization to scrub information from the press. Scrub information. There's certain information that we are okay with, and there's certain information that we're not okay with. We don't want information that may challenge the Russian state. And the fact is, what you found out at a certain point, it was just bureaucracy. They didn't want you to find things that may embarrass their fuck-ups, their foibles, the same way we use national security today. With the difference being, this is private enterprise that the governmental apparatus is being pressing down upon to get them to do their bidding. They're terrified of trying to face them from the standpoint of politics. And they know that the internet has been the avenue, that this basket that they were able to keep people in, the holes that have been poked in it have gotten too far and too pronounced. And you have this thing of the internet where people are finding new and interesting, sometimes off the wall, like aliens eating babies, but other times dead on, like questioning whether or not there was a Syrian strike at all. And dead on from the standpoint of people who don't want war, who is sick of the system being the way the system is and who's ready for the system to be changed. The political class is doing what it can to squash dissent. The political class misses that their loss of legitimacy is the thing that is pushing this level of dissent. Meaning status quo itself is the thing that is creating the monster. The condition that people are living in is the thing that's creating the monster, if you want to call it a monster at all. I'm just making the point that the conditions on the ground, based on the way this country has propagated itself and based on the way these two parties have been co-opted and people realizing these parties have been co-opted, is the thing that's creating fire for this kind of revolutionary verve. I don't know how far it goes, but Lord knows I hope it keeps going. And what I fear in this is that the political class starts putting more pressure, that this is just the beginning, that Alex Jones is just the crust, the crust, the top of what may be a growing and growing list of people who they take out. I showed the other day where on Facebook they were also taking out Palestinian sites, BDS sites, as if by virtue of being Palestinian or supporting Palestinians, you're somehow being racist by definition. It's utter nonsense. But it does have something to do with the groups that Facebook or Google or Twitter have aligned themselves with. What I would say to you is, I strongly suspect that the tech companies, who are not blank slates, who are not purely in this ideologically pure, meaning they do have allegiances in this, were probably shocked to shit that Trump won, probably don't want to see a situation where that could happen again, meaning cutting down on dissent and alternative voices. It's not going to solve their problem. Meaning the censorship is not going to solve their problem. It may, in an odd case, make the problem worse, seeing as where people may go to try to get their information if they find the situation where they can't get their information in normal ways. I said this, though, and I'm going to end it here, like a year ago. I said they will use the Russia thing to try to tamp down on dissent. They will use the Russia thing to attack people who they don't particularly like. And they would use a sliding slope. Jones is a goofball. But what about BDS sites? Look at this. Just so you know what I'm talking about. Palestinians fight Facebook, YouTube censorship. Facebook says it's deleting accounts at the direction of the United States and Israeli government. That's amazing. Is that what you want? Is that really what you want? Oh, I moved this. Facebook closing pro-Palestinian pages, newspaper reports. There's another one. Facebook deliberately targeting Palestinian accounts after meeting with Israeli government, says rights group. This is not Alex Jones. This is not Alex Jones. Yes, Alex Jones was deleted. Alex Jones was a goofball. He was the tip of the iceberg. What about these sites? Facebook closes account of Palestinian activists. Facebook shuts down several pro-Palestinian pages. This is racist. This is literally racist. They're shutting down groups based on racial identification. You can say cultural, whatever, but you get my point. Is this really what you want your platforms to be doing? Facebook censorship Palestinian raises serious questions. Yes, it does. It does. But everybody's okay with it on the left and because it's Alex Jones. This is not on the left. I'm sorry, this is not on the right. Facebook deletes Gaza-based news agency Safa's account hosting 1.3 million followers. Did Facebook intentionally block prolific profiles of Palestinian journalists? The answer is yes. Palestinian news network suspended by YouTube over Gaza war footage. They're showing reality, and YouTube flags them. They are showing reality. The problem is not in what they're showing. The problem is the reality that they're showing. YouTube in this process looks at them and say, yeah, we don't like you showing that reality. In other cases, Palestinians are being essentially, castigated along racial lines. They're digitally, lynching is too strong, but digitally silencing them based on their cultural identification. They act as if, by virtue of being supportive of Palestinians, that you are somehow anti-Semitic. That's nonsense. And in an odd way, that's almost racism in and of itself in the way that they're going about it. They're racially profiling people on the digital network and eliminating them based on their political preferences. This is not being racist, sexist, bigoted, anything else. They're being silenced. Yes, they went after Alex Jones. Alex Jones is a goofball. BDS is not. BDS is not. I'm not going to keep this long. YouTube removes Palestinian Media Watch account. Inciting or deterring YouTube forced to shut down Palestinian Media Watch. They're doing this at the behest of governments. Donald Trump, working in cahoots with Israel in this case, putting political pressure. And I don't know if this is Trump and them putting political pressure, but clearly the Israeli government is putting political pressure on Facebook, and Facebook is listening. This may take place in multiple countries, depending upon the Israeli lobby in those countries. And for all I know, Trump is putting pressure on them to do the same. I know members of Congress have been putting pressure on him. I'm just making a point to you that your reality is being melded and shifted and tweaked. The things that you see, the relevance and importance of those things are being kind of pushed and moved around depending upon what they want you to see. In this case, they went after Jones. He's a goofball. Jones is not going to be the last. Jones is not going to be the only. And in the same way they got rid of Jones, they got rid of anti-war voices. Van Buren. They got rid of him. They got rid of him and two other people who were part of the Ron Paul website. Gone. And not just got rid of Van Buren, they erased them from Twitter history. It's like Stalin erasing Trotsky out of the photograph because he didn't like Trotsky. In this case, he's been on that site for 6 years, and you can't go back and see anything that he's done for the past 6 years. This is your corporate overlords, the top 1%, making choices to essentially eliminate you from your ability to speak. Seeing as this is down to new public forums, they're eliminating your ability to speak. My point in this is simple. The left shouldn't be happy with this. And ultimately, you have a political class that is putting pressure on a corporate class to do their bidding because they can't or won't or may not necessarily be able to beat the populist revolt that's coming for their heads. So let's see who's here. How long did this go? 19 minutes. Damn, that's too long. Mike. Oh, Mike again. It's me again from the last video. Does it sadden you so-called liberal cheered the banning of Jones? It does me. The Democrats are unrecognizable as a party, but hey, I'm just a cisgender white male. What do I know? Yes, it does sadden me to see them cheer Alex Jones go anyway. It does. Alex Jones Look, the man is a cartoon. I am less scared of Jones and more scared of the people who believe what Jones is doing is true. That said, the reason why people go to Jones is because they sense that something around them is wrong. They were told for God knows how long that there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. The entire reality of the United States conformed for years on end to something that was a complete and utter lie. The thing in Syria. They've had wall-to-wall coverage going after Donald Trump. They've had wall-to-wall coverage on Russia. And when you look at the media and you ask people, just human beings, what do you care about? Russia gets 1%. 1%. I think that was a Gallup poll. That wasn't even the right-wing poll. That was a Gallup poll. People didn't care. You know what people care about? How am I going to pay for my college loans? How am I going to make sure that my wife or mom or sister or brother, whatever, how am I going to make sure those people are intact from a medical standpoint, from a job standpoint? How am I going to have a decent life? That's what they care about. They may believe you that Russia has something to do with the election. What they don't believe is that it mattered. So, yes, you can beat that hammer, beat that dog all you want. That dog is already dead. And ultimately, they care about more things than just that. So, yeah, it saddens me because it ultimately means that they were willing to shed this idea of free speech, this idea of being able to get your point across and make your case purely for political reasons, a political angle. I don't like what he's saying. I want him to shut up. Shut up. Be quiet. And to tech companies, go along with this, almost like an end around the First Amendment. Well, these are private corporations that can do whatever they want. And down the line, blacklist. Blacklist. It's not that I like Alex Jones being the cheerleader for the fight of censorship. I don't like it at all. By the same token, you make the case that he's the best case for censorship because he's the thing that's pushing the edges of what it means for censorship. I mean, how else are you going to know what censorship is if you're not necessarily dealing with the edges of the censorship? I hate the fact that they're cheering this. Yes. I hate the fact that they're cheering it. Stephen Call, Russiagate is about the Democrats saving face and continuing their status quo fantasy narrative. It is, but they're using this as a way of trying to silence dissent. Meaning, if they can